Hi, this is Randy Larocque with Sinister One Podcast from Surrey, British Columbia, Canada. We're going to be talking about all things music with musicians, photographers, producers, engineers, and luthiers. So stay tuned and let's get this started, shall we? Hey everybody, it's Randy Larocque here, and this is the Sinister One Podcast, and this is episode 3. Yes, episode 3. And today we have the honor of having a guest on that I sort of met online. Well, that's probably got to be about 2 or 3 years ago, because I happened to be on Facebook and I was following a BC Rich fan page, I guess you could say, and ran across this gentleman who actually used to work for the Rico family. And being a BC Rich geek that I am, I thought it would be really interesting to get this gentleman's perspective on some things, as well as giving us some luthier type tips. So please welcome to the show, Mr. Glenn GRAFF. How you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. How are you?
Not
Thanks
too
for
bad
having
at
me.
all. So tell us about this. I mean, my very first guitar that I bought myself was a BC Rich guitar. It was beat to crap, played awesome, sounded like shit, but it was
Yeah.
mine and it was cool looking. What was it like to work with the Ricos?
Wow. That it was surreal. I couldn't believe it was happening when it happened. I was working with Wayne Charvel, and the president of his company is Eric Galetta.
Mm-hmm.
And they had told me, well, Wayne had taken off up north with his son to start his other line of guitars called Wayne Guitars, and he left Eric and I at the shop in Calamasa, California, to finish the the line of guitars he named. Oh gosh, it was the I can't even think of the name of it. It was the anyway, it had shells on it. He had shells on the whole body. And when Wayne had went up north, he told us that the Ricos were going to move into the back of the shop. And I was tripping when he told me that, because the back of the shop, the middle of the shop was where we did all the woodwork, and the back of the shop was a 10 by 20 room where the Ricos moved into. Can you believe that?
That's awesome.
So that's how I met them. And I remember the first day they walked in to the shop. It was very surreal, and as I can remember, and I remember trying to get to know them, because they're not that open to new people around them, you know. And they weren't sure of me because they didn't know me. And Junior was at the shop a lot of the time, so I got to know him first. And his dad was basically introducing him into the business, and he was not that familiar with woodworking. So that was a blessing to me, because I was able to step in and help him.
Absolutely.
And that got me in good with them. And from there, it all grew from there.
Now, what year are we talking about this?
This was 1993, early.
Yeah,
In
so
January.
the Ricos have basically, in BC Rich name, had already been synonymous with radical looking guitars, and a lot of the metal bands and all that kind of stuff played that. That's what got me hooked on it, right? I mean, I remember seeing Motley Crue playing them, and some other bands that were out there that were playing them, and they were just incredible, right? So it was like a shock value. But at this point, they weren't just building shock value guitars; they were building solid guitars too.
Right. And I thought my impression of them before I met them was different because of that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I thought they were going to come in all, you know, with some kind of, I don't know, evil attitude, you know, towards everything. But they just normal people. The Warlock guitar, Bernie said he just drew it one day. It was the first guitar he ever drew with straight lines, he said. And he thought it was the worst guitar he ever drew in his life.
Yeah, it was the first BC Rich I had was a Warlock, and yeah,
Yeah.
there's just something about that guitar that just
Right.
blows my mind. So from a luthier point of view, I mean, there's been a lot. I mean, I know a lot of guitar players, and I know I've had many guitars over the years. And every time you have discussions with guitarists, they're always so excited about their gear.
Yeah.
And you know, the myth out there is that one type of neck set is better than another. So we've got your bolt-on, which is basically the neck is a separate piece and bolted onto the back of the guitar.
Right.
We've got the set neck, which has kind of like the neck, but it has like a tongue and it kind of glues into the body, correct?
Right.
And then you got the neck through, which is the neck, which has a body piece built into it, and almost like wings are kind of glued onto the side of it.
Yes,
right?
wings.
Now, there's always this talk about, bolt-ons are better for sustain, or, you know, neck through stay in tune better, and all this other kinds of crap. Is there any truth to that? Like, realistically?
No. Really, we've done a bunch of experiments when I was with BC Rich because of this controversy. And because you're dealing, you've got the electric guitar and you got the acoustic guitar. It's two different things. The electric guitar we're talking about right now has an electromagnetic pickup in it, okay? It's only picking up sound within an inch. Okay, after your string or anything is an inch away from that pickup, you're not picking anything up.
Right, it's just dead.
So basically, the wood has nothing to do with it.
Really?
Okay. Now, what it does have to do with it is the density, okay, from your bridge to your nut of your guitar. That's where your tone's coming from.
Okay, that makes sense. Because I've played on, like, I mean, in my collection right now, I have 2 set necks, I have 1 bolt-on, and the rest are neck throughs. And they all play, realistically, they play the same.
Right.
I mean, the thicknesses of the necks plays a role. The type of frets definitely makes it a different feel. But I don't really notice any sustained difference, realistically, from any of them, or out of tune, because I had a bolt-on that, you know, I could not play it for like a month and come back and it's still perfectly in tune. And I've had other ones that, you know, you got to tune it 3 or 4 times throughout your rehearsal, right?
Yeah. Same thing goes with shimming your neck. It's not going to make any difference in your tone. I mean, it may make a little, but you're not going to hear it.
Now, do they normally shim to try and get more sustain, or are they shimming it to try and maybe level out the neck so you're getting a different, you know,
setup?
Yeah,
setup. That's all. The shimming is a fast way to make the guitar, because when you're making a neck through the body, you've got to hit it right on the first time.
Yeah, you can't do much after if you fucked it up.
Yeah, you can't change that. Okay, the bolt-on neck, you can, if the neck breaks, you can replace it easily. You can make adjustments afterwards easily, and you know, it just makes things a lot easier for someone who isn't as precise if you're making a lot of guitars, you know. But that's what we found.
Yeah, because I mean, like I say, I've got a selection of every one of these guitars, and they all, you know, have their quirks, right? I mean, now I've heard people also say locking tuners will keep your strings in tune longer. Realistically, is
Well,
for me, I always found that it was just locking nut just makes it easier to put on new strings, right? You can clip it, lock it, away you go,
right.
right?
Yeah, your locking nut it at where your nut goes, like the newer style. The like the platinum series, we have the nut behind the locking nut behind the nut.
Yep.
That's second choice. First choice is locking nut where the nut goes.
Right.
Okay. Because there's a distance between where the nut locks and where the string actually exists, and that, well, where it winds. And that right there, let's say you got your locking nut locked down, everything's in tune, and by accident you tune the tuner instead of your fine tuner. You've created a tension at the top of your neck that's going to eventually pull your locking nut a little bit out of tune,
Interesting.
because there's a difference in tension above the nut.
That makes sense. I've done that by accident as well. Like, wasn't sure if my locking nut was tightened up or not, and then oops.
Yep. Sometimes you even break the string.
Done that. Yeah.
You know, some of the experiments we did was, and you can do this yourself, if you have your electric guitar and you're playing it, get a piezo type pickup that you stick to the side of your guitar, okay? And you can create a tone from the wood that your electric guitar is made out of by using this as a secondary pickup. You can, and you'll find in your tone, when you stick this piezo pickup in different places on your body, the tone goes through your strings, then through the wood, and then to the pickup, or the
Interesting.
piezo.
No kidding.
So now, where you place that is going to create and only the density of the wood.
Right.
Okay. You're dealing with, oh, I like maple better than mahogany or all that. Okay. You just go online and you look up the density of hardwoods. Okay. I think maple has a density of 800, their rating. Okay. Any wood with the rating of 800 is going to have the same tone as that maple.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Alder's one of the softer ones. It's around 400.
Right.
And there's more wood in that category.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the softer your wood is, the lower the tone's going to be, especially in acoustic guitars.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Denser the wood's going to be, the higher pitch it's going to be.
Right. Right. Yeah, because I mean, there's so many different things on a guitar that can affect the tone as well as the playability. I mean, the type of, we were just talking about types of wood. So like back in the like 80s and stuff like that, a lot of import guitars were made with basically plywood.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, my very first guitar, I decided I wanted to try and refinish. I repainted that thing like 4 or 5 times, and every time I'm sanding it off, and then all of a sudden one day, I'm into the pulp, right? And you know, after that, the guitar is completely fucked. But I mean, would there be that much of a sound difference between a plywood body to a solid wood body?
Not really. The plywood, as far as the Ricos were concerned, the plywood was used because of guitars breaking and being able to give a warranty on the guitar. For instance, you know, the Ironbird. You make that out of a hard wood that has a grain in it. If you hit it a certain way, one of your points of your guitar is going to just break off.
That is interesting. I never even thought of that. You know, I looked at it as a possible cost savings or
Right.
whatever, right? Make the
Right.
guitar lighter because, I mean, my Ironbird was fairly light, and it was because it was a plywood body. And I go and pick
Right.
up my Explorer, my Epiphone Explorer, which is solid.
Right.
And after playing it for like 20 minutes, I start feeling my lower back starting to cave
Right.
in on me,
Right.
right? Because
Right.
it's so much heavier, right? Tone-wise,
Uh-huh.
I mean, you really didn't notice that much of a difference swapping from
Right.
guitar for guitar.
Right. Exactly.
Interesting, interesting. I never even
Uh-huh.
thought of that.
And you know, plywood, the plywood we're talking about is not the average pine plywood.
Yeah, not
We're
something you're going to
dealing
see
with,
in your house or something, right?
right, it's a Baltic, no knot plywood, and it's actually more expensive.
No
Just
kidding.
just just do a Google search on half-inch Baltic plywood, and it's more expensive because you take this stuff. What we did was we took it, and it's a half-inch thick, and we would stack it until we got 1 3/4 inches thick,
Right.
and we would cut it like that, and then these things would never break.
Yeah, they
I mean,
sound like pretty durable.
yeah, you could use them as an axe, and they just would not break.
Right.
I remember now Bernie Jr. Oh man, that guy, he was fun to work with. I mean, we used to, you know, he used to make mistakes on necks and chop them up so his dad wouldn't see them. He
No
would.
evidence. It did not happen.
That's right, Dad. And and he used to take those necks, and now all the BC Rich necks in those days, the American made, were solid necks. They didn't have that little glue joint that's in a lot of the foreign necks. And Bernie Jr. used to put it across 2 bricks and jump on it like a trampoline. And these necks would not break, man. I've got one right here that he just pounded the heck out of. But they just wouldn't break.
Nice. Yeah, because I mean, I found that a lot of the older guitars, I'm talking like 80s, early 80s to maybe even early 90s. The import market was very, very substandard compared to North American built guitars. And it was to reach a price point because I know, not everybody can afford, $3,000 for a Gibson or something like that, right? So it was a cheaper and more accessible way for people to get affordable guitars. And some of the guitars that they built back then, they were either, like some of the imports were either very good or they were firewood, right?
Right.
But nowadays, I'm finding that a lot of the import models are really rivaling some of the American-made guitars. I mean, I've got LTDs that are just beautiful.
I can't believe some of the work they're putting out. Bernie Sr. was responsible for a lot of that, because I remember working in the shop and hearing him just yell at some of these guys in China or Korea about the quality of the instrument. And because it had cheap parts on it, Bernie made sure that it was made out of good wood. If you notice, these import BC Rich guitars from the 80s were made out of the same wood, except for the plywood part, that the American made were made out of.
Yeah, some of those necks are absolutely beautiful. Like, I love them.
Yeah, and they're like 3/8 of an inch thick fretboards, and even the frets were high nickel. But the only thing he couldn't really fix that burdened him was that doggone bin master.
Oh, yes. Oddly enough, to our viewers out there, that's actually how we met as well, because he built a bridge for these infamous pieces of shit.
Bad.
Oh, they were terrible. So what it was is, I think it was like the mid 80s to early 90s. BC Rich had these Bendmaster, what the hell were they called? Breakmaster pieces of shit
Yeah,
bridges.
bin Master 120s.
And the metal was so brittle that you got to a point that you didn't even want to touch it because you were afraid it was
Right.
going to shatter, right?
Yeah.
So you actually started building replacement bridges for these.
Right. And in 1994, I came into the shop one morning and there was 4 or 5 Platinum Series guitars sitting on top of the bench. And I walked in and it was just myself, Bernie Jr. and Bernie Sr. in the shop at this time. No one else was working with us. And he just asked me and Junior what the hell we were going to do about this. Because too many of them were coming back. Look, when these bridges were brand new, okay, on the guitars, 30% of them were no good.
Now, what kind of metal was it made of? It almost felt like pot metal or something like that because it was so brittle. Like it's not even steel.
Right. Well, for the first thing is that the design of that block inside the Bin Master is so intricate. Okay, it's really small, and where the drill holes are, there's very minimal space between the holes. And then the metal, it's almost like, and I've cut these things, up, and they're hollow inside sometimes. It's almost like the Chinese or someone overseas took their machine that they made to make these bridges to where you just threw in a bunch of actual aluminum cans and it would press it into these things.
Wouldn't surprise me because I don't think I had one. And I've had 3 guitars over my lifetime that had these bridges. I don't think I ever had one that didn't break. Like
Right.
They were literally crap. And it was so terrible because you get this guitar, it had a great finish on it. The neck was like butter, had that big ass harpoon headstock on it. It was a badass looking guitar, but you couldn't fucking play it because you were afraid that if you accidentally brushed your hand against the bridge, you're going to snap one of those screws out. It was terrible.
Yep. And I remember then I looked at Bernie Sr. I said, man, I don't know. I wish I could fix these things for you. And I went home and thought about it. And over the years, I drew drawings and everything. And when I resurfaced on Facebook because of Eric Galetta, the president of Wayne Charvel's WRC Guitars, is what it was. I resurfaced, and that's when I met Dave Cohen. I was looking for Bernie Jr., and I didn't know that Bernie Jr. went through all this stuff when he had he got hospitalized mentally and stuff. I didn't know anything about this and about how they did a raid on the BC Rich shop when he was in the hospital and everything. So he was basically in hiding when Dave reintroduced me to Bernie Jr. And I told these two guys, well, mostly Bernie Jr., well, I said, man, look, there's got to be something I can do. And Bernie Jr. said, he reminded me of 1994. He said, remember you said you were going to fix the Bin Master? I said, oh, yeah. And I started digging out my old drawings, and I told him, I'm on it. I came back the next day with a fix. People thought I was some kind of wizard. But no, I had all this. This has been planned for years.
And I mean, realistically, to describe it, it almost looks like a Floyd Rose
Yeah.
It still fits flat and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So a question, if somebody had a guitar that they wanted a bridge in it that was similar to like, the Kahlers, the ones that fit flat on your body and all that, any guitar could use your bridge, correct?
Yes. If it takes a Schaller or anything, I mean, Floyd Rose was the guy who first made that design.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else got in line after that. If it fits one of those bridges, my bridge will fit it. Now here's where the Platinum series is different, is that the post spacing is 72 millimeters. Okay. If you could somehow take a Floyd Rose bridge, which is 74 millimeters, and pull it in a little bit, you'd never have to have me make a bridge. That's the only thing I changed with the Floyd Rose. All I did was make a Floyd Rose bridge with a post spacing of 72 millimeters.
Now, was there a reason why they would use a different spacing? Was it?
Yeah. So you couldn't buy another bridge for it. You had to buy theirs.
God.
Oh, yeah.
Brutal.
Oh, you should have seen some of the prototypes that we made. Whenever we made prototypes in the shop, we would go to Ace Hardware and buy all the parts, okay? Make the prototype, make it work, and then one at a time change the parts to uncommon parts.
Right.
And they call that good business sense. I think they call it that. But yeah, I mean, business. Okay.
Yeah, no kidding. That's unfortunate. So what do you think of the new guitars that are being built now from overseas? You know, we've got Korean built ones. I think every Korean built guitar I've ever owned has been fantastic. I've had a Japanese guitar that's very well built. Even the guitars from China. Like I was, and I'll be the first one to admit it, for many, many years, I was like, nope, don't even point me in the direction of a Chinese built guitar, because I've had so many bad experiences with them. You know, you'd have one or two good features on the guitar and the rest of it's a bucket of shit. But over the last few years, they've been coming out and being better, because Korea, Indonesia's pumping out some really good stuff. I've got an Indonesian-made LTD. It's fantastic. My Solar that I just got is built in Indonesia, and it's one of my favorites now. I mean, it's changing, and I mean, they're not as cheap as they used to be by any stretch of imagination. But I mean, when I bought my Solar, it came from Spain, I think it was shipped from. Converted it into Canadian, taxes in, and delivery with the customs that they fuck you with at the border. It cost me $2,500 with a case. And I mean, nowadays you go and look at a lot of import guitars that you're buying online or wherever, and it's like, it's that much with no case, and you still got to buy shipping and everything else that goes along with it, right? For guys like me that play once a month on a weekend, you know, the weekend warriors, I can't justify myself going out and paying $4,000 and $5,000 for a guitar. A, I'm not that good to be playing something like that, and B, I can't justify it because I'm not going to make that kind of money to justify playing it. I mean,
and someone's going to steal it.
Or I'm knowing me, I'll turn around and I'll drop it and I'll snap it and break the headstock off of it, and then it's firewood as far as I'm concerned. But you know, I've owned high-end guitars. I had a Gibson Explorer. I love the shape of it. I've always been an Explorer guy. It's been my favorite shape.
I love them
from day one. And it could not stay in tune. I tried everything. I tried everything, literally everything. And I finally just said no. And then I got an Epiphone the new Future or whatever the hell it's called,
Right.
Prophecy or whatever. It's got Fishman
And
pickups in it.
and
It's
they kick
purple.
ass.
It's my favorite guitar. It's the
Yeah.
very first brand new guitar I ever bought in my life.
Right.
And I absolutely love it. I record with it. It's my steady Eddie. It stays in tune. And it was half the price of the Explorer, of the
Right.
Gibson. You know?
Yep.
So, I mean, I don't think you always get what you pay for. I mean, and sometimes you do. I mean, you buy
Right.
a $450 guitar, you're not going to be expecting much. But
Right.
you know, some of the even the entry level ones, guitars. I've seen certain companies that are doing it, like the Geo from Ibanez. I've played a couple of those. They're good guitars. They're not
Right.
awesome
Yeah.
guitars, but they
Right.
sound great and they play fine.
Yeah.
So
And you set them up. It's all in the setup.
right.
You
Now, what do
know.
you like? What do you prefer better? I mean, coming from a guy who makes
Right.
bridges, do you like Kahlers? Do you like Floyd's, or are you a fixed bridge guy?
You know, I like the Floyds because of the tuning. Okay. They just don't go out of tune. Okay. I've been working on a flat mount bridge that has everything a Floyd has except for the springs. Okay.
Nice.
And I've kind of been slacking on that because everyone's coming out with these new flat mount bridges that you can fine tune. And they're made overseas and they're excellent. I really can't compete with the overseas market. They're so good now.
Yep.
And it's not going to change, Randy.
It's not.
It has turned into the war that we're fighting.
Yep.
We're going to lose it. We're going to lose. And then with all this other stuff coming in, you know, with our government going on right now with talking about all these tariffs and stuff that we're going to be putting on other nations.
That's going to put that
I don't
import
like
market
it.
in jeopardy, right? Because I mean, obviously those prices are going to increase as well. That's going to really make the consumer decide: is it really worth paying, you know, this much more for an import when I could buy, you know, an American-made one, right? So,
Yeah, we think we're cool now.
yeah.
Look at Gibson. Look at Gibson. I've seen so many problems with their American-made stuff. Okay.
Well, I know between, what was it, 2012 and 2017, I think it was those years. Don't quote me on that, but I know that there was some quality issues during those years. I know a few people that owned guitars during those times and had numerous types of issues. I do not believe, I think my Gibson was actually in that year as well, so that may be part of it. And no, I read something somewhere, and this was just some shit that I read somewhere on the web somewhere, probably bullshit, but you never know, it may have some validity to it, was that the set necks, the way they were gluing in the set necks wasn't secure enough, which made sense to me, you know, as I'm reading it, because I'm like, okay, it's, you know, it'd be different with the neck through, because I mean, it's one solid block, right? Whereas on a set neck, that makes sense if it wasn't glued properly, or the tongue wasn't, you know, pushed in far enough, whatever. I don't know, but I know that if I'm paying that kind of, I think the expectations would be a lot higher. You're paying $4,000 for a guitar. That thing better, make Pop-Tarts out of it, right? You know?
Well, it's just something as simple as if someone was to hire me to come into their company and bring their costs down, okay? I could, if they're a company like Gibson, I could save them several $1 million a year just by using white glue.
There you go, Gibson's. Give this man a call, right?
That's right. White glue can be affected by the weather. It's degradable. And that's what they've done. taking shortcuts like that. Now your guitar is going to start falling apart after it gets 10 years old because the glue is degrading.
But I think that's kind of like that seems to be the theme with everything nowadays is we build things to be disposable because in 5 years, I mean, look at appliances. Like, fuck, my stove
Right.
is probably 30 years old and it's never going to die.
Right.
Like, it'll outlive
Right.
me, right? The
Yeah,
shit
but
you
they're
build,
not in business either.
well, that's right, you know. So I mean, I think that's what the thing is now is they build disposable products. You'll be happy with it from 5 to 10 years. After that, you need to upgrade, and sometimes it's
Yeah.
even less, right?
Right.
That's
Buy another
unfortunate.
one.
Yeah, and
keep
that's
them in
why
business.
I think that's why a lot of people are trying to snap up some of these older guitars, right? I mean,
Yes.
I'm a gear junkie and I'm a guitar junkie and I love.
Mhm.
I spend probably at least an hour a day looking on Reverb and Marketplace and everywhere else
Oh, yeah.
because looking for that dream
It's fun.
guitar or that potential
Yeah.
project, future project,
Right.
You
Love
know,
it.
and I look for the older ones because they're still around. You look at some of these, some of the newer ones, that were made maybe 5 to 10 years ago. They've got some quality issues in that.
They
There's
do.
nicks and chips in the paint.
Yeah.
You know, the clear coat they're using is a lot different now. It's thinner.
The wire they use to spin the pickups. Pickup copper wire has this. It's like a nitrocellulose insulation on it that's clear, and that stuff has gone cheap. It's cracking now, and when it cracks, the coil is able to bleed into each other and your pickup won't work.
Is that why you get like those like microphonic types of sounds through
That's
your...
right.
Yeah, okay. I had a pickup
Yep.
that was doing that, and it was like, holy shit, I swear to God, I was picking up somebody's radio station next door on the food channel or
Yeah.
something.
And then that brings another subject of you could die because everyone is grounding their bridges. If you're playing your guitar at home, that's fine. Ground your bridge. But if you're going to do a concert, have you ever gotten shocked by your mic?
Many times.
That's because your bridge is grounded. That little
Interesting.
wire that comes off your little spring thing, your claw
Yep.
in the back there, that's a ground wire. And your guitar is real quiet when your strings are or when your hand is on the strings. That's because you're the ground now. You get in a high wattage situation and you're going to die if you get shocked by your mic.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. I've also had a couple of face plants into the mic, dude.
Oh, yeah. And you see stars.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm trying to remember where the hell I am in the song, right? Thank God I'm
Right.
a rhythm guitar player.
Oh, one time I was on stage messing with my foot pedals, and just by trying to hurry up, I stuck the doggone 1/4-inch jack in my mouth. Well, I saw stars.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, since we're talking about pickups, what's your preference? Are you a passive or an active guy?
Well, I like passive because you don't got to change the battery, but I like active, like the EMG 80s and 81s, because they are freaking awesome. Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I've got both. I mean, I've got two.
I've got some of your pickups in my guitar.
Yeah, I've got So I've got two. I think two guitars that have the EMG 81s. I've got one with the Fishmans, and I've got a few with passive. And you know what? If I'm going to try and play clean or anything clean, I don't like my EMGs. I just don't think get me there. I think the Fishmans. This is just personal opinions and through my experience. The Fishmans do a better job at that clean stuff. But the Solar Duncans that I've got in my solar guitar, I actually got to be honest with you. I mean, I bought it with the intention of replacing pickups at some point.
Right.
They sound phenomenal. They sound
Oh, they
really,
do.
really good. And I do like the fact that I don't have to worry about a fucking battery, because every gig day it's like ritual, you know? You get your guitar, you clean it up a little bit, pop in
Yep.
a new battery. I don't care if I put one in last week. I'm putting a
Right.
new one in right now, because there's nothing worse than plugging in and going, I'm not getting any sound.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Exactly.
I do like that extra push that it gives me.
Right.
I
Yep.
do notice that when I do go to a passive pickup, I have to add something just a little bit, just to sort of
Yeah.
give it a little bit more of a punch. But I mean, it's
Yeah.
so subjective too. I guess it depends on the type of music you play, the type of
True.
sound that you want. I mean, every guitar player's got their sound that they like or that they're striving
Right.
for, which I honestly believe is like it's a journey. I mean, I think I get to the sound that I want, and then a year later, I'm like, nah, I want something different,
Yeah.
right? You kind of get bored of it or whatever, right?
Right.
Yeah, but
Exactly.
I think going from a guitar, like I had a guitar that was passive pickups and I had to put active in it.
hmm
And trying to find spaces to put a battery without routering out your body
Right.
is a challenge, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, I was
Yes.
lucky enough to sort of put a couple of little notches in the cavity of the body, just enough to fit it in there. But I also
Right.
don't like cramming my electronics in there too tight, because it's just,
Right.
you're asking for trouble, right?
Yeah. And your lid's bulging because, yeah.
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 No, I've been there.
But I've got in most of my guitars, I prefer the Seymour Duncan J series, uh, the Jazz,
Can't go wrong with
and
JBs, right?
yeah, they seem to what they that seems to be what I've settled for, you know. And then I do use other pickups depending on what I'm doing, you know, and what kind of music I'm playing.
What is your favorite guitar right now? Like, if I were to say, here you go, Glenn, here's a blank check, go buy your dream guitar. What are you bringing home?
Wow.
What are you bringing home?
Oh man, I'm gonna bring home. Hmm. I'm gonna have to think about that. I'm gonna bring home. You know, I think I'm gonna bring home the coolest looking one I can find, because I know that I can make it what I want to make it.
Fair
I'm
enough.
gonna find something that looks cool.
Awesome.
Uh, as far as you know what brand that is, I think that uh, uh, I think that golly, BC Rich is just keeps. I mean, I'm a BC Rich lifer, you know, but I have found there are like Washburn and you know, they were Washburn goes way back,
Yeah,
man. They go
absolutely.
into the 1830s. Um, what was the other guitar? The something tone. Uh, they were doing these crazy. Like it's the other guitar that the Bendmaster bridge is in.
Oh, God.
Silvertone, not
Silvertone?
Silvertone. It's not Washburn. A lot of the guys have been coming to me, but they were doing these crazy shapes before BC Rich was.
No way.
And I couldn't, but you see, you know, they started doing it in the 60s, and that's the wrong time to start making these designs. You know, I could see the Beatles with a bat looking guitar,
Oh, yeah, that'd be.
you know, but
Here's John Lennon in his Ironbird.
right. Oh man.
She
Uh
loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. But I think that is what the market is, you know. If you because I mean, come on, every guitar has two horns nowadays. I mean, so which one do you pick? They're all making the same thing. You know, I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to find something that is crazy, that's different. whoever might be doing that, and it's only seems to be BC Rich right now,
Yeah.
because no one's taking any risks.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, it also guess it depends on what you're going to do with it. Because if it's a guitar that I just want to hang on the wall, I don't really care. Then that's a different story. But if it's a player, because I've had some guitars that I thought were the coolest friggin' guitars ever, and I bought them, and I played them, and I didn't bond with them. It was just one of those things where it was, you know, I just didn't vibe with it. I just didn't. It was something about it that I just didn't like, whether the way it hung, or the neck, the fretboard, something about it. So for me, I actually, if I'm gonna play it, I gotta vibe it. Like the guitars that I have now are the guitars that I play. I've got a BC Rich Junior V Deluxe, which I love. I've got a Warlock Exotic. I've got a BC Rich Dagger with the Bigsby on it, which I really, really love. I've got an LTD Screaming Skull that I really love. My Epiphone Explorer and my Solar. I mean, every guitar that I have now, I play. I get to the point where sometimes where I just want guitars for the sake of guitars, right? And then I end up with like 15, 16 of them collecting dust. Then I feel shitty because there's such an awesome guitar that somebody should be playing this thing, right?
My guitar gently weeps.
Right, exactly. Well, how about some tips? Okay, because most guitar players I know are either one or the other. They're the ones that their guitars, their gear is pristine, everything's cleaned, their pedal boards are ready to go, you know. And then you got the ones that show up and they haven't changed their strings in a year, and there's like beer stains on it. And I'm pretty sure I saw somebody with a drink ring on their fucking guitar.
Nice.
So, you know, you get both sides of it. What are some tips to keep your guitars looking and sounding good?
Well, I think that being just paying attention to them. I mean, you know, I think it's a difference between someone who cares and someone who doesn't care, because, you know, I'm just, whenever I grab my guitar, I've got my wiping rag there, and I kind of wipe the back of the neck and I wipe the front of it off, and I start to play it. And my setting, when I set up a guitar, it's continuous. I am always setting up. I'm always making changes. I'm always tweaking my string. I'm always doing something to make it more what I want.
Yep.
And, you know, that kind of person, you don't have to be a good player and play be a simpleton, and it shows. You know, and you've seen plenty of these guitar players, you know, that are more into what they look like than how they play, or you know, all that stuff, you know. And then you've got someone who comes in with their guitar that, well, who wants that guitar? You know, but they catch your attention for 20 minutes.
Exactly.
You know, I just think that people are different that way. I mean, I've never been one to like an arrogant person, because arrogance gets you in a position to where you're done.
Yeah.
I'm good. There's nothing else you can do to me.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah, you've stunted your growth.
Right. And I mean, even to this day, Randy, I do not look at myself as a Luther. I don't. I just look at myself as, I'm trying to make this thing look the best way I can. And I've been doing it long enough to where I know some things that make it easier.
So how often, let's say somebody plays guitar an hour a day religiously, Okay, how often should they be changing their strings? Because I get people that say, "Oh, I change them once a month." I
Right.
get people that say, I change them, every
Yeah.
twice a year. I mean, me personally, I find that for me, changing strings isn't necessarily about the new strings. It's for me, it's like it's like date night with my guitar, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I've got my fret polish, I got my fretboard
Uh,
and stuff there, my
right.
rags and new things, and I spend probably 45 minutes to an hour, getting it all nice and pretty and all that kind of stuff. But realistically, I change my strings probably more than I need to. I
Yeah.
don't know. I mean, I remember back in the day, I was always told that, oh, you should be changing your strings at least once a month if you're
Right.
playing X amount of time, right?
Right.
Well, the fucking strings are $20 a
Oh
pack
yeah. I
now,
know.
right? So
I
I ain't
know.
doing that every month, right? I probably do
Yeah.
it
And that's a
maybe.
crazy deal too, because those strings are all the same. They come in on big spools, and then companies grab them like Alexa and do a little thing to them and resell them.
Yeah, because I've been using the NYXLs, the Didarios,
Uh
and
huh.
since I started using them, I have
Those are
not
good.
broken one string. So for me, that was, because I used to use Ernie Ball for many, many,
Right.
many, many years,
Right.
and they're like where I'm at, they're about $10 to $12 a pack, whereas
Right.
the NYXLs are $17 to $18 a pack.
Right.
For me to
Right.
spend the extra few bucks, to me it's only a couple extra bucks, not a big deal. But I know
Right.
that it gives me some confidence because so far I've never broken one. And I
Right.
mean, I'm a heavy-handed riffing, chugging kind of guy. So
Yeah.
for me to not break strings, that for me
Uh
is
huh.
huge because I mean I was breaking strings
Right.
all the time. But
Yeah.
do you have a particular string that you enjoy? Like, let's talk
Well,
electric
I
guitars.
like those strings,
Hmm.
the XLs. I
Hmm.
really like them a lot. But generically, I'm like you were. I just use the Ernie balls. Um, and me, when I change, I don't, dude, I change my strings when they break.
Yeah, right.
And then a lot of times I just change that string.
Hmm.
I mean, I've got recordings of strings that don't have any more spin on them. And nobody's standing there saying, "Oh, that string sounds bad."
Yeah. Unless it's like rusted out and corroded and shit.
Right. I mean, golly, I really haven't found it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there are things that make a difference, I mean, but but critically speaking, I really don't change my string until the winding wears off of it. I like using these new metal picks they have out.
Oh, no kidding.
I like the drive and the chug that they have, chug, 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 chug. And I love them, but they wear your string out more.
Yeah, I guess so, right?
Yeah. That's just like using stainless steel frets.
Hmm.
Okay. You're going to get more sustain out of them, but your strings are going to wear out faster.
Absolutely, yeah, because you've got two different same metals grinding against each other,
Yes.
right? For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Actually, that's something I wanted to ask you about as well, because I know that's a selling feature now for a lot of guitars. They're like, oh, it's stainless steel frets, right?
Yeah.
Whereas before they were making them out of nickel, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if I've ever really noticed the difference, to be honest. And I mean, I don't necessarily have a train here, and maybe I just haven't
Hmm.
played enough of one or the other.
Right.
But because I've been probably buying most of my guitars in my lifetime have been, imports for pricing, of course.
Right.
And then most of them were nickel frets. So I've got a few guitars with stainless steel frets, and I
Hmm.
don't really notice the difference.
Right. They're going to, a nickel fret, the difference you're going to notice is that over time, the nickel alloy, they're not 100% nickel, but the nickel alloyed frets are going to have dents in them. They're going to
Yes.
get dents. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's going to, that's going to cause a problem with when you're bending your string, which brings me to a whole different thing that I've been experimenting with. And I've sold a couple of these necks that don't have radiuses. They're flat like a classical guitar. It would blow your mind, the sustain that these flat necks have, and you can bend them past the middle point of the neck without them deadening out.
Interesting.
I mean, just visualize that radius fret in your head. Once you bend it past the top point of the fret, it's going to deaden out once you bend it past that.
No kidding. That's awesome.
It just stains a lot more. But back to the nickel alloys. When you bend your string, you're gonna feel these up and down roller coaster dents, especially where you make chords. You know, at the cowboy chords at the top.
Yeah, I've noticed that. I've got one that's going to be needing some refretting soon.
Right.
And I'm trying to decide whether I want to refret or just buy a new neck.
Yeah. I think that stainless steel is probably the best way to go.
For longevity, absolutely. But
Right.
you're not going to notice any tone difference or feel there.
Yeah, well, you're gonna notice a little more sustain. My personal opinion, because the fret is harder.
Right.
And you have a denser area that you're pressing against.
And it's going to take less absorption of the strings.
Right.
Makes sense.
Now, if that's noticeable to the normal guy, I don't know.
Well, see, that's the thing, right? I mean, everybody tries to make all these little different tweaks and says, "Oh, it makes a big difference," but
yeah,
does it? And who's noticing it?
Right.
You know, like I don't think I'm ever going to have somebody come after me after a show and go, "Wow, your guitar sounds so much better now that you're using stainless steel frets."
Right. Right. I noticed those strings you're using. But, you know, this whole radius thing on the frets, if you go back in history, when they started trying to make guitar more popular in the 30s and the 40s, they created this radius neck for comfort.
Interesting.
That's all it was comfort, and it was a selling point.
Well, it works for me because I got small ass hands, so I have a hard enough time trying to play guitar at the best of times, right?
Right. Yeah, my hands are small too, but I make do.
That's it. Glenn, I want to thank you so much for spending your Sunday afternoon with me. It's been very informative. If you send me some links and all that kinds of stuff, I'll send all those little links and they'll be down here somewhere-ish. Yeah, hopefully we've given some people something to think about. And tried to address some of the myths of guitars out there. Awesome.
Anytime, man.
Awesome.
I'll come on anytime.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Mr. Glenn Graff, and this is the Sinister One podcast, and I'm Randy Larocque, and we're signing out. See ya.
Take it easy, man.